Hi, and welcome back to Hudson Appliance for another episode of Wicked Good Food. I'm your host, Matt Williams, and today we're going to make a couple different dishes that you can make right at the table to kind of impress your friends. We're going to do it like you would see in a classical restaurant. We're going to make a homemade, real quick and easy Caesar salad, and we're also going to make some guacamole tableside. But to go along with that, we're going to have some tortilla chips that we're going to bake, make them a little more healthy, and we're going to make some croutons as well. We're going to start out with our croutons. I've got a clove of garlic here. I just want to snip the little end off the garlic. Remove that. Now I'm going to be using a mortar and pestle to make the guacamole today, so I thought I would use it to smash up our garlic a little bit for our crouton. So I'm just going to take it and stick it in there, give it a couple little whacks, and you'll notice that the peel was still on there, but now the peel comes right off, just like so. We're going to put that back in there, and I'm just going to use a mortar and pestle and just mash it up a bit. Now if you like big hunks of garlic, leave your hunks of garlic really big. If you like a little smaller, then just keep on working on it. So we've got relatively big hunks, which is what I'm looking for. I'm just going to use my fingers, scoop it out, and I'm going to throw it right into some butter. This is what we're going to make with our croutons. Whoops, a little piece of peel there. Let's get rid of that. We've got some garlic and some butter, and we're going to add some salt and pepper to it, but I really want to let the garlic cook nice and slowly so that our butter is flavored with all our garlic, so you don't get a really intense piece of garlic. Now I'm going to make the guacamole in here, so I have already got a little garlic residue left in there, but I'm just going to move this off to the side. Now for our guacamole, we are going to make some tortilla chips. What we're going to do is we're going to brush them with a little bit of oil. And the oil is going to give it just a small little bit of fat, but it's also going to give our salt something to stick to. But the oil plays a really important role when we go to bake our tortillas because it's going to help them crisp up a bit. So these are actually corn tortillas. You could use flour tortillas if you want, but these corn tortillas are fantastic, in particular if you have someone that can't have gluten. All right, so I'm just going to spread these out a little bit and sprinkle them with a little bit of kosher salt. Now this is the time when you can put anything you wanted on there. If you wanted to do these with Old Bay seasoning and serve it on the side of some crab dip or something like that, that would be awesome. I'm just going to stack them all up, cut them in half, and then cut those halves into thirds. I think if I did my math right, we should have sixths. So I'll just spread these out on a cookie sheet, the oiled side up. And it's okay if they overlap a little bit because as they're cooking, well, I'll go in and stir them up a little bit, but you want to spread them out. All right, now we're going to go ahead and stick these right into our oven. Now, because we're going to be making croutons, I have the oven much lower than I normally would. Our goal with our croutons is that our finished crouton is nice and crunchy, golden brown on the outside, but dried out in the middle. If you have your oven too hot, then you find that it looks beautiful on the outside, but it's still like soft bread in the middle. So we have to cook them very slowly. That's not going to affect our tortilla chips. So they normally would cook at 375 or 400 degrees, really hot, but they're just going to go a little more slowly because we have to do it slower with our croutons. So for our croutons, I've got a loaf of bread, fresh bread, but croutons are great for using stale bread or old bread because you're going to cook them anyways and they're going to dry out. So I'm going to go ahead and slice this. And it's up to you what size you want your croutons. There's nothing that says you couldn't serve a crouton like that. You could put this in the bottom of your bowl and put your Caesar on top, or vice versa. But we're going to make them a little smaller, a little more traditional. So we're going to slice these into sticks, essentially. And then these, we'll go ahead and slice into the size we want our finished croutons to be. Now I've pre-sliced a few of these just for the sake of time. And our garlic has had a chance to cook a little bit in our oil. I do need to add a little bit of pepper and a little bit of salt. Now I already have some bread here in the bowl. I'm going to add this to it. And come back over here to our garlic butter. Just give it a quick little stir. Then we'll go ahead and pour this right on top. You want to toss them around a bit. I always like to do it in a bowl because that way you get them much better coated and you can toss them around. Some will have a little more butter than others, but as long as you toss it pretty quickly, they'll be equally coated. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and put these right on our tray. Spread them out, same thing. We want to put these in one layer. This one fell off. You can always taste one to make sure it's all right. Yeah, that's pretty good. All right, these are going to go right in the oven. When we come back, we're going to do some of the prep to make our guacamole and some of the prep to make our Caesar salad. All right, so we have our tortilla chips and our croutons in the oven. We're going to go ahead and start making our guacamole. First ingredient we're going to use is a jalapeno pepper. Now, if you don't like things that are spicy, don't use a jalapeno pepper. We're going to use about half of it. The most spicy part of the pepper is actually this membrane in here and the seeds. I'm going to remove that just because I don't like the texture all that much. So I'm just going to use my knife and cut along and move this off to the side. Now, one thing to be careful of, anytime you're using a chili pepper of any kind, is whatever it touches is now spicy. So if I come over here and I cut up an onion or I cut up a tomato, it's going to be very spicy. If I happen to take this finger and rub it in my eye or do anything else, it's not going to be a good scene. So jalapenos aren't actually that spicy as far as peppers go, but if you're using a super spicy, most people will wear rubber gloves and then you can throw them off. You don't have any of that capsaicin on your fingers, which is what makes them hot. So I'm just going to give this kind of a rough chop because it's going to go in our mortar and pestle and I'm going to mash it up there. So this will just go right in. And then for a contrast in color, I'm going to use a red pepper, red bell pepper. And if you'll remember in one of the previous shows, I diced one of these. I cut it both ends off, made a little slice down one of the walls, and just went through and removed all the seeds, just like so. Then I've got my pepper. So this I'm going to go through, and I'm not going to use all of this. That'll be plenty. This I'm going to dice a little finer because I'm not going to mash it as much in the mortar and pestle. I'm just going to move these out of the way for right now. I'm going to use an onion. So cut the end off, cut it right in half. And now you'll notice I didn't peel it. I always cut it first before I peel it because it makes it a lot easier. And you can pull the skin right off like that. Now I don't need all that much onion, but so I'm going to actually cut that in half and just use a quarter of it and make a couple little slices. And I think that's about right. So we'll put that in there. Move that off to the side. And we're going to use a lime. So I'm going to roll this lime around, put a little pressure on it to try to break up some of the little cells that are in there. And juice some of this right in there. Now if you'll remember, there's still a little bit of garlic left in there from before. And I'm going to put in a little bit of salt because I'm going to end up putting some salt anyways. And this is going to act as just another abrasive. So I'm going to take this and just start to mash and break it up. And you'll see there's going to be a lot of moisture that comes out, in particular of your onions. Now traditionally, this would be made in something called a molcajete, which is very similar to a mortar and pestle, but it's made out of a lava rock. A real one is made out of lava rocks. So it's very coarse. They actually search to find just the right lava rock, and they'd be a little bigger and usually have a couple feet on them. This one is actually just made out of formed concrete. All right, I've broken that up a bit. We've got some of the flavors in there. I'm going to add some fresh cilantro. Now, this is how much cilantro I got. This is the smallest amount I could get at the market, which is okay. We're in the winter still, and I don't have my garden going. But I'm not going to use all that for this. So we need to be creative on how we're going to use it. So one of the things I like to do is to take it and put it in my food processor and blend it all up. And then you can freeze it in ice cube trays. And then if you need a little bit of whatever it is, whether it's basil or cilantro or whatever herb, you can just take out a little ice cube tray, crack them out of the ice cube tray and just store them in a plastic bag. And another thing you can do is you can separate them and just hang it like this, and you'll actually end up with dried cilantro that you can break up or use in the whole leaves. So I'm going to throw these whole leaves in here, and I'm going to break these up a bit as well. So now, if you get all your prep done beforehand, you can come out to the table and you have all your mise en place. Mise en place is that magical French term that means everything in its place. You have all your mise en place together. You can make this right at the table, right in front of your guests. And what's more fresh than that? Let me make sure. Oh yeah, I forgot our tomato. So tomato's actually going to go in at the very end. And I want to remove the seeds from this. So I'm just going to take my finger and pop out the seeds. And I just don't like the texture. And there's enough moisture in there already, so we don't need any more liquid from our tomatoes. So I'm going to dice these up. All right, we'll just move these out of the way. Now we're at a point where we can put in some of our peppers, but our main ingredient, which is our avocado. Now an avocado has a really big pit right in the center. What I'm going to do is take my knife, I'm going to cut until I hit that pit, and then spin my knife all the way around until those two sides match up. You should, if I did it right, be able to turn it and it'll separate. Then you just take your knife. If you're scared about stabbing yourself, go ahead and put a rag in your hand, but give it a whack, and then you should be able to pop that off. And then I'll just pop that off on the side of the cutting board. And now I'm going to take, just to make it a little easier, I'm going to take my knife and I'm going to actually go and cut my avocado right inside the shell. So it's going to be kind of pre-diced when we go to put it into our mortar and pestle. All right, and hopefully we can, let me pop this out of the way. Turn it inside out and scrape all that off in there. Now this is a pretty small mortar and pestle, so I'm not making a very big batch. One avocado is going to be plenty for this, but if you have a bigger crowd, you can look and you can get a bigger mortar and pestle. There's nothing that says you can't do this in a mixing bowl. You can mix it all up with a couple wooden spoons. You can mix it up with metal spoons. The riper your avocado, the easier it's going to be to make as well, because you'll be able to actually do a little bit of mashing. If you have an avocado that's pretty strong and tough, then, I'll move that out of the way, then you're going to want to cut it a little more beforehand. And you can see we're almost at the limits of this mortar and pestle here, as far as room. All right, we've mashed up our avocado just about as much as I'd like to. Put that hunk in there. And we're going to add a little bit of our tomato.